guys, welcome back to another Touchdesigner tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to be creating a visual that's very similar to Ryoji Ikeda piece, or just a lot of his work, as you've probably seen, which looks a little something like this. Just going to turn down the music. It's going to be built off of a very similar technique that I used in one of my other tutorials, where we do an audio spectrum data, basically twist it on its side and displace it. But if we turned off that displace, you can sort of see here, once the song kicks back in, we have the lows down the bottom, mids, and then the highs, and we're just going to displace that evenly across the whole screen. Before we start, I just want to mention that this is technically a repeat tutorial. Some people pointed out, and I hadn't caught it, that my recording software was outputting really low res images, and for some reason when I clicked into my settings, it was like, hey, let's record at 1080p and then output at like 640, and I was like, that's not cool. So I'm here to re-record this essentially. But it's good because since then I've actually sort of improved on the technique. I don't know if I'll leave the original video up and just link to this, but yeah, we'll see. And I've also gotten feedback about building this file from scratch. So I'll attempt to build it alongside showing you where we need to connect each dot, but I probably won't build this from scratch because since then I've done a lot of finessing and controls, and I am still sort of playing around and getting it to a stage where I quite like it, if that makes sense. Other than that, I think it's good to go. It's worth mentioning that this file is available for download on my Patreon. If you want to plug and play your own songs straight in, play with this and do your own effects, or use it as a visual, go ahead. You can go and support me for just a few bucks a month. Otherwise, a subscription is free, and all your support and comments and feedback is actually so helpful. Like, honestly, all the constructive criticism is making all of my videos get better by better. Without that, I'm pretty lazy, so I probably wouldn't improve. So you know, all of this is purely because of you random internet strangers, and I love you for it. Cool. So let's dive into today's tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the background and sort of just start by explaining the spectrum analysis technique that we have going on here. So we need to go ahead and get a audio file in, or audio device in, so you can drag and drop your own file or internally route your audio. I'm really curious if people want a tutorial on this. Basically, you can set up a internally routed audio so that way you can like play music on your desktop, so like play Spotify, and then Touchdesigner will pick that up and then output it while also processing that information, so you can use it as visual data. Not sure if people are super interested in that. It's a bit of a niche tutorial, but if you are, let me know. So we have our audio file in here, and if we want to hear that, we need to right click and connect it to a audio device out, and then set this to your audio device. I'll keep that there. I'll just disable it by clicking this bypass flag here. Also worth noting, this tutorial will be more aimed at beginners. I'm trying to make all this content a bit approachable. Hopefully that doesn't drag out the length too much. So next we want to go to the palette, which you can get by clicking this. Oh, it's just off my screen. Actually, let me adjust that there. There we go. By clicking this little button up the top left, open palette, go into our tools, and then grabbing audio analysis, dropping it there. We're going to come back to this one later, but feel free to connect that to your audio file in, and then we can hide the palette. So next we also want to right click and grab a audio spectrum. Boom. So what this is going to do is essentially we have our two channels here, left and right. And it's a spectrum analysis. So higher frequencies like your hi-hats are really condensed up here. Vocals usually sit around here, and your basses and subs sit around here. Essentially the foundation of what we're doing today is going to be twisting this onto its side and then dragging it across as little data points every time there's a little pulse, if that makes sense. So what we need to do is connect this to a top, so that way we can get sort of visual information about it. So by right-clicking the output here, and I just need to re-enable parameters, we can go to our top tab and go chop to, and then you can already see we kind of got this represented in a 1 pixel tool. So I'm not sure if you can see that on YouTube. Visual information here. We can leave the data format as is, and I'm just going to double check that we haven't changed anything. We haven't. Cool, so we can leave that as is. Next we want to connect this to a level. The reason for this is in this visual we're sort of going for like very stark levels of contrast between like black and white. So you may, again, a bit of a stylistic choice here, but you might want to just say like turn the contrast up a bit. But then you can see you may be losing some of the frequencies, and you're like, okay, actually let me turn the brightness up a little bit and then the contrast down. I'm gonna leave it at there where I'm getting quite a lot of information coming through with a bit of contrast going on. Maybe I'll even turn the gamma up a little bit. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with these settings, so feel free to copy that if you want. But that's essentially just to get more of a difference and like more easily identifiable spectrum pieces. So the next thing we want to do is connect this to a fit top. Now again, I'm sort of like reconstructing this and haven't memorized it off by heart, so I'm just going to be like checking my own reference pieces. But the fit top essentially, like I remember the point of everything, just don't remember the specific parameters that I have set. We just want to fit it to like the right pixel height, so we have it spread across the right images. So if I go to here, you can see that we have it set to a width of 256 and a height of 1. So if I just get that, this 256 is important. That's basically going to be with the resolution that we're using for the height of everything, or width in this case, but we haven't turned it on its side just yet. And then I believe I also want to set, no, everything else as is. Cool. So next we want to connect this to a crop. So the reason why we want to connect this to a crop is if I put this in the background, you can see that like not all of the spectrum information is evenly distributed. That's just how spectrums work. Like lower frequencies are much bigger, longer waves versus highs, which are like way more condensed. So basically we want to use this crop to sort of just spread it out a little bit more. And if I make this into our background and I say start cropping the right a little bit, because I'm sort of noticing around here like it's a bit you know, we're getting a lot of information going on here, not so much going on this end. In fact, nothing like past this point. So I'm like, cool, let's just like drag that in and be like, yeah, okay, that's good. Same with the sub, like pretty much nothing going on down here at all. So I'm just gonna drag that a little bit to the left, and maybe I want to leave some wiggle room. You're welcome to copy my values if that is something you prefer to do, by typing that in. But I think I like prefer my tutorials to explain how I came about achieving these numbers, if that makes sense. A lot of people are like, hey, type in 0.3, and I'm like, that's cool. Why did you choose to do that though? Whereas here, I think it's more important that I actually show you the use of this tool, especially as we're doing a tutorial for beginners. So now we want to do a flip. Basically just want to flip it onto its side. Boom. And then no flop. We want to change from no flop to bottom left. So we just like flop it like that. And then cool. If you do top left, you'll get the the low frequencies at the top. Whatever really makes more sense to you. I think low frequencies at the bottom just generally makes more sense. So I've chosen to do bottom left. And then, wow, we have a lot to go, man. This tutorial, huh? Then we want to do a fit. So this fit is going to be us setting it to like the, basically this, like as we want it here, where we set it to a full screen resolution. We need to set the common to be 256 by 256. And just going to connect this one in. Then we also, yes, so what we want to do with this fit is we want the audio when it spawns in to essentially spawn in from the left, and then we're gonna like manually drag it across rather than the new information spawning from the middle. So on this fit, we also want to go to the translate tab and go -0.5, which is just gonna go -0.5 and drag it all the way to the edge of the width here. Cool. Next, we want to do a transform. Now, so this transform is essentially going to act as the scrolling technique. Now, in my original tutorial, I had this just set to a solid rate. So if you prefer it being set to a solid rate, you can do that by using the ABS time function. But instead, we're gonna do it to the speed of the song. So the first thing we need to do is go to our tile and make sure extend is set to repeat. So every time this bar gets pushed off screen, it starts repeating it infinitely. And then we essentially want to just mimic, where is, I'm looking at the fit. There we go. I was like, why is it not moving? We essentially want to mimic this movement where we just have it like scroll across like that. So what we're going to do is go back to our audio analysis tab and connect a select. We can click this little plus icon on the audio analysis to interact with the UI. Can't remember which ones I'm going to use, so I'm just going to enable all the frequencies, the kick, and the fast spectral density. So this fast spectral density, in layman's terms, is essentially just telling us how fast the song is. So these numbers are attempted to be normalized between 0 and 1, but you can see as we see here, it goes over 1 sometimes. So it's not perfect, but essentially this is telling us right now, hey, this song's pretty fast. And I'm like, cool, let's make it move faster when that happens. And so the way we do that is we need to connect the select to a speed chop. So the speed chop is essentially just going to be a perpetually increasing number at the rate of what this select value is set to. So when this starts decreasing, the speed will still increase, but it'll just be at a slower rate, which is perfect because we can then use that value to translate our position. So we can click plus in order to grab these values, and then grab the FMFD from speed and drop that onto this translate X option and go chop reference. You can see now it's scrolling across like so. Now that might be a bit too fast for you. I think I actually in my one, oh no, I left it as is. But if that is too fast for you, you can simply divide it by 2 and it will make it, 2 times slower. Or you can times it by a factor of 0.8 to make it 80% slower, or 20% slower, I should say. Really up to you, stylistic choice, as always. Cool. All right, so next thing is our feedback edge. So if we go to our palette tools, image filters, and get a feedback edge, basically this is just going to be used for creating a little trail and just, making it more interesting. I'm just going to copy the feedback edge we have from before and plug this one in. So I played around with these values to get it all right. I changed the edge color, the source gain, and a few more. Please pause the video and copy these parameters if you need to. It took me a little bit of finessing to get it all to a level where I'm pretty happy, and I was like, you know what, I'm happy with this sort of spectral look that I have going on. It's starting to get pretty choppy and also traily, but also it's not overlaying too much, and it was just a lot of fine-tuning, playing with numbers to get that number, so feel free to just copy those parameters there. And then we just want to connect it to a ramp. So this ramp is pretty much an optional feature. I kind of want to just disable, if I go to, So I've disabled the displacement going on, and I just want to show what happens when I turn this ramp off. We basically just get less spacing between the values. In fact, there's some weird little audio stuff going on right now. I don't even understand it myself. But if I turn that ramp back on, you can see it just deletes some of these nodes along this point, which just makes it a little less congested. So styling option, but nevertheless, I will show you what we need to do. So we want to connect it to a ramp. We want to set this ramp to be radial, and I believe that is it. Oh, and then drag the phase to 1, which you can't really see it, but if I turn the background off, essentially it's creating that little like fade and stark difference between these points, so that way when we get our final image, we're going to have like more of a depth difference between values rather than being like a straight line across all of them. Don't change this output, keep that output as composite. I believe it's also set to multiply. I will just double check. Yes, cool. All right, so next we want to connect it to our displace, but instead of doing that, I'm first going to actually do the rest of the component here, because this displace essentially evenly distributes the audio spectrum across multiple. Sorry, got a little message and got distracted. It basically evenly distributes the audio spectrum like into chunks across the screen. So we can actually still build this without doing that, and we'll just have the like lows, mids, and the highs like I showed you earlier. So we might as well do that first, because I think it'll help with a little bit of understanding. So the first thing we want to do is connect it to a fit, like this. Grab our little fit. This fit, we want to set the common here to whatever your resolution will be. So if you want to do a 16:9 YouTube video, do it like this. If you want to do a phone screen size, for example, do 1080x1920. You can do square as well if that's your choice. And then set the fit to fill. Cool, so that's basically setting our resolution. Next, we want to connect it to a displace. And this is where we're going to start to get like the sort of noisy, bitmappy sort of look going on. So I'm just going to copy these parameters from below. Doing this is a bit of a time-saving technique. So you want to add in a noise top. In this noise top, please feel free to copy these settings. Obviously the seed is completely up to you. That just changes the arrangement of the noise. But this is just going to give us like the points where we're going to displace it along. And then on the transform tab, you also want to make sure you turn the scale right down to 0.2. You can hover over that and drag it down, or just type in 0.2 across all of them. And then on our common, you want to set the width to be 1, and then the height again to 256. Cool. All right. Next, we want to connect it to a math top, and pretty simple here. We just want to change the channel pre-op to positive. I believe the rest of the parameters are the default ones. Yes. Okay, cool. And then the rest is all the same as well. And then finally, we want to connect it to a fit. Once again, make sure we keep the width at 1, and then set the height to whatever the height of your resolution was in this fit here. If you want, you can also go to chop and create a constant, and then, no, not a constant like so, and then do like a res x and type in 1920, and then assign these values to all your resolutions. You can do a res y as well. That way when you update your resolution here, it'll update across wherever you've set your resolutions, but that is a bit of an extra step and we do not need to do. Cool. All right, so now that we have these 3 operators, we want to plug it into our second input of the displace. Now you can really start to see, oh yeah, we're getting that look now. We're getting that very bit crushed kind of style. The displace does have a few options off memory. Just copying, so we want the vertical source to be none, which is just going to drag from the horizontal. I believe the displace source midpoint, we want the horizontal to be 0. Again, a lot of this just came about from me playing, and then extend is probably going to be set to repeat rather than hold, and yep, cool. So now we have with the displace, you can see these little streaks here. Basically, when it's off the screen of the displace and it gets an input, the hold stretches it across the entire image, which is what you're seeing here. Whereas repeat will just repeat the displace effect infinitely. I hope that makes sense. So we also want to have the displace effect scrolling, and we're going to use the speed chop again and grab our FMSD and throw that onto our horizontal displace weight, like so. Now it's going the wrong direction. That's pretty easy. We're just going to tap a little negative in front of it, and it's also going insanely fast. And so I'm like, you know what, let's divide that by 4 or 3. Pick a number, any number. This is meant to be, I believe this is quite a fast part of it. Yeah, so this is around 1. So you can, this is probably the max speed I'd want at, maybe a little bit faster if it goes a little bit faster. So dividing by 3 in this case works for me. Cool, so we're really starting to get the look now. We just need to do a few more things, which is firstly from this bottom half here, we want to connect in another fit. So now we're going to get the sort of streaky lines that go between everything. So this fit, I believe we just want to set to fill, and then the resolution that we have set to 1920 by 1080. Get these very streaky lines. Then we want to do a, is it? Yes, an edge. We want to edge it, not emboss it. We want to edge it to get like really sharp lines. And honestly, the default is looking pretty good. Just maybe turn off this pre-multiply RGB by alpha. Yeah, that's looking nice. Then we want to get a threshold. Basically, we just want to get the white bits of this image here. If you like the sort of gray streakiness, you might want to skip this step, but I essentially just want to get the white bits. Maybe if you do want to keep some of the gray, you can turn the threshold down to like here, find a part where it's like getting enough information but isn't too congested, and then you can drag the soften up and you'll see you'll get a little bit of that gray coming through. And then we just want to combine the two. So I'm going to do a composite and drag that into there, turn off the screen, turn on this one. I believe my composite is set to maximum, but as always with these composites, I just suggest that you can copy what I want if you want and be like, that's cool, but play around with all these options. Find what looks best to you and then build on that. Like maybe you want a really cool grayscale and looking one like this, like a weird threaded pattern. I was playing around with it yesterday. I really liked Z film, or was it Y? I think it might have been this like really dark like Y one, and then I built off of that. But for the sake of today's tutorial, we'll just do a maximum. And then we connected it to an RGB key. This is kind of optional. It's just going to add a black background, which may be necessary for some of the combined operations you have going on here, but not the maximum of sorts. And then we're done. The last little bits I have going on here is just a null, and then this is for projecting it, and then this is for recording it, but these are not being covered in today's tutorial. So basically what we have right now is a Ryoji Ikeda piece, but it's a spectrum analysis turned on its side. So like you can tell there's a lot of low frequencies going on right now. And if I plug in that sort of like default song, so, oh wait, is this the default song? Oh, this is the default song, which is like a lot of that kicking motion. So the bit we're gonna do now is essentially to redistribute this information a bit evenly across the piece. So we have it just set to the spectrum on its side, which is cool, but honestly, I feel like it can look better. You can get like a lot cooler depth. Basically, this is just a styling option. The piece we have going on right now is more accurate per se, but I kind of just like spreading it across and getting a bit of a cooler look. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So I'm going to actually copy all of this, and we're going to go through this up here. I'm also going to disable this option. Don't worry about this stuff, we're going to go over it. Do not stress, do not worry. Cool. Alright, so firstly, let's disable the background. That's distracting. So we want to get a noise chop. In this noise chop, we want to set the parameters sparse, drag the period right down so it's very high frequencies, which is going to give us a nice little pattern essentially. Leave the offset to 0 and everything else copy as is. We then want to turn this into video information like we did before, so chop to, and then we're doing a very similar technique, just leaving this as is. We're going to connect that to another flip, once again to a bottom left, same as before essentially. Connect the flip to a fit, set it to fill, common. I might actually change this to 256 by 256 to just keep it sort of more in line with what we've been doing. Cool. Next we want to remap it so it's got this even distribution. So the way we do that is connecting from this fit into a ramp. This ramp should be horizontal, and then copy the rest of the settings as is, and then make sure we set the output to just set the resolution only. We then want to connect this this ramp into a reorder, and then plug in the fit into the second input, and then make sure we set this output green to input 2, and then copy the parameters red, green, blue, alpha. I believe that is all default though. And then we want to connect this reorder into the second input of a remap. So we get a remap, go into the second one. And then the only thing worth note is setting the extend to repeat as well. So essentially what we've done is we've just created this little pattern here, and we're like, cool, can you redistribute the information we're giving to you across this new pattern? And so now when we go from between on our previous chain, so right after the feedback edge, we have that radial ramp. Let's get this radial ramp into the first input of this remap, and you can see now we have this sort of even distribution going across. It's like repeating per se, like it's just a repeating pattern. And then plug this into our fit. And now, when we click play, you can see we have a bit more of a repeating pattern going on. So it's nowhere as precise, but it is much more hypnotic, I believe is the right way to put it. But yeah, that's it for today's tutorial. So as you can see, this tutorial is a little bit longer. I am conflicted between what kind of tutorials to do. I think a lot of people want short and snappy ones, but even for a visual that's not super complex like this, but is a little bit involved, the tutorials can easily stretch out to 30 minutes when we have to build it from scratch. And even then I'm sort of pushing through. So give me some feedback. I would love to know if you guys are in it to learn more complicated visuals like this and you're willing to sit through the longer visuals and watch me build it out, or if you want a more variety of, say, hey, let's do some simple tutorials that are only 10 minutes long, like exercises, or let's do long or complex visuals like we have been doing, but let's make the tutorials snappy. Let me just let me go through each of the parameters and then you guys can pause on them. Sort of depends what works best. I think the ideal world is that we have a visual that looks great, keep the recording to 20 minutes, and I also rebuild it from scratch. But I feel like it's just those three things. One of them has to be sacrificed, if that makes sense. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. Other than that, thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far through. Please support me on Patreon. I appreciate every one of you that goes on there. I've added a few new tiers, lower, cheaper tiers if you're just able to support with money and don't need anything from it. And then also some higher tiers. I'm thinking of adding some one, Discord access, and creating a little Discord where we can sort of share files and work on stuff together, jump in a call, and build stuff together or just like work in tangent. And I've also added a tier for private tutoring. I offered tutoring in Touchdesigner locally, but I don't see why there's no reason I can't extend that to a global thing. So if Touchdesigner is something you really want to learn and you have the disposable income to do so, then let's talk, let's like build something together, and let's make something really special. I love the software, I adore it, and I just want to share it with everyone. And I also want to make sure it's completely free, which is why I do these tutorials. But if you have means to support in other ways, then that is greatly appreciated. And I just went over 30 minutes, damn it. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's tutorial, and I'm just going to leave it at that. See y'all.